Hi, I'm Harold Bell, and this is the Legends of Inside Sports and the Way We Were. Today's segment will be a sermon delivered by the Reverend James Spencer titled Heroes and Role Models, Parents and Teachers, as I promised. Reverend Spencer was also a federal judge for the United States Eastern District Court of Virginia. In August 2015, Judge Spencer presided over the historical trial of former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell. This marked the first time in the Confederate history of Virginia a black judge would preside over a white governor of the state. What makes it more ironic, 18 years earlier, as a Virginia delegate, Bob McDonnell worked against the state Supreme Court nomination of Spencer's wife, Judge Margaret Spencer. The 14-count indictment filed by the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia against McDonnell and his wife included charges of fraud and soliciting loans and gifts from Johnny Williams, the chief executive of a dietarian supplement company. Williams had hoped to use the governor to promote his products. The indictment accused the McDonald's of accepting $135,000 in cash from Mr. Williams, thousands of dollars in golf outings, designer clothing, and a Rolex watch engraved the 71st governor of Virginia on the back. It also accused the former first couple of lying about the gifts on loan statements and to government investigators. McDonnell and his wife were convicted, and Judge Spencer sentenced McDonnell to 2 years in jail, a sentence that many thought was too lenient, but in the end it didn't matter. McDonnell won on appeal and he was set free. I would guess the conviction was overturned because it fell under the category of white-collar crime, and white-collar crime exempts white crooks from jail time. This proves there is still justice in just us. As the state of Texas finds itself in dire straits because of Hurricane Harvey, there are many heroes in action in the state. This tragedy brings back memories of one of my heroes, the late Texas Congressman Mickey Leland. He died in a plane crash in August of 1989 while he was on a fact-finding tour of Ethiopia. Mickey Leland was an anti-poverty activist who later became a congressman representing Texas from the 18th district, and he was chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus. He was making his sixth tour of a refugee camp along the Ethiopian-Sudan border as chairman of the House Select Committee on Hunger, a panel he had helped to establish 5 years earlier. The caucus has not seen leadership like Leland's since his death. He also brings to mind how so-called heroes and role models like NFL legend Jim Brown are talking out of both sides of their mouths when it comes to NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick. Jim claims that Colin is going about his boycott in all the wrong ways by not standing for the flag. This is the same Jim Brown who last year said, "I agree with Colin not standing for the flag. I back him all the way." What happened to that Jim Brown? Somebody, please. Jim goes and he comes. Well, let me say this. This is the same Jim Brown who marched with Martin Luther King in his nonviolent protests across America. This is the same Jim Brown who called a press conference with NBA legend Bill Russell and others to support Muhammad Ali's stand against being inducted into the U.S. Army because of his religious beliefs. Is this the same Jim Brown that when I told him about how boxing promoter Don King had reneged on his word to a partnership with me in a sports media project? But instead, he wrote me a letter with a check for $10,000 and said, "Harold, this is the extent of our agreement and ends our beautiful relationship. And you're right, you don't have to kiss my black ass for nothing." I told Jim I returned the check. My reason, I was not going to allow Don King to pimp me. His response, "Harold, Don King is a low-life son of a bitch. You know that Mike Tyson and I are tight. But I keep my distance because Don is a treacherous MF. 2 years later, I mentioned Don King. This time, Jim Brown swears Don is the best thing since sliced bread. I later discovered that Don had written him a $50,000 check for his favorite charity, the American program. In 2007, I helped coordinate a benefit tribute for my friend and homeboy, NFL legend and Green Bay Packer great Willie Wood in Georgetown in Washington, D.C. Willie was suffering from dementia, and his teammates, quarterback Bart Starr, running back Paul Hornung, defensive end Willie Davis, wide receiver Boyd Dowler, and other NFL notables, including tight end and NFL Hall of Famer John Mackey, Redskin Hall of Famer wide receiver Charlie Taylor, and Jim Brown, all participated. The monies raised was supposed to help aid Willie with his nursing home bills, but Willie's attorney took the $50,000 plus raised and disappeared. I didn't call the cops or the Ghostbusters. I called my buddy Jim Brown, asking him to contact the attorney for an explanation about the missing funds. I knew that the last person the attorney wanted to hear from was Jim Brown. I remember the attorney didn't even want me to extend an invitation to Jim for the benefit. Jim agreed to contact the attorney, but I insisted on Willie's sister Gladys would be in on the call with Jim, and he agreed. The call was made. I waited several days for an update from Jim or Gladys. None was forthcoming, and I decided to call Gladys. Boy, was I in for a surprise of my life. When she answered the phone, I asked her about the results of the call with Jim and the attorney. She said, "Harold, Jim Brown insisted that I hang up the phone and he would take it from there." I could not believe my ears. I immediately called Jim at home in L.A., asking him for an explanation, and the brother went ballistic on me because I dared to question him about his conversation with the attorney and why he didn't want Willie's sister in on the conversation. He kept using mother in every other sentence, and I knew my mother had nothing to do with his questionable actions. I also began using the word mother to make the conversation balanced and understandable. But I was happy he was in LA and I was in DC on the telephone. His rage and indignation almost came through the telephone, and I was almost sure if he had been face to face, I would have been in for a good ass whipping. Jim Brown is known for going off on folks who don't see things his way, even when he is caught cheating on the golf course. 10 years later, the $50,000 plus is still missing. The best thing that I can say about Jim Brown, what you see is not what you get. Tight end, NFL Hall of Fame player Shannon Sharpe is now a co-host on a TV sports talk show, The Undisputed, with Skip Bayless. And Stephen A. Smith of First Take airs on ESPN. Well, both of them called out Jim Brown on his stand against Colin Kaepernick, and rightly so. The difference is that Stephen A. has a whole lot in common with Jim Brown. They both talk out of both sides of their mouths. They will sell anyone out for a dollar bill. When you start to talk about heroes and role models, please exclude the name of my former partner, Jim Brown. A word to the wise, they say, is sufficient. I would advise Stephen A. to be on the lookout for Jim because he's likely to bitch slap him when he sees him. But I think he would have second thoughts on doing the same thing to Shannon. Let us listen to my 1989 commentary on the tragic loss of my hero, the late Congressman Mickey Leland. This was 28 years ago. Just think, 28 years ago. And then we will hear from the Reverend James Spencer in his sermon on heroes and role models.
I'm going to get to that right here. Today, we as a nation and world are much poorer because of the tragic loss of Representative Mickey Leland of Texas. Mickey's plane crashed while on a fact-finding hunger tour of Ethiopia. The lives of 15 others were also lost, including 3 congressional aides. Mickey was the chairman of the House Select Committee on Hunger. He refused to try to solve the problems of his district and the world by sitting behind a desk with pencil and paper on Capitol Hill. He had to be where the action was, and this would cost him his life. Mickey moved and marched to a different drummer. What you saw was what you truly got with him. There was no hidden agenda in dealing with Mickey. All of his cards were dealt face up. In today's politics, one goes along to get along, not Mickey. If it was not going to benefit the people, no way, Jose. This is a very unusual trait for today's politician. It's too bad that Mickey's loyalty to his people and infectious personality was not habit forming for many of his do nothing colleagues of the Congressional Black Caucus. He was a breath of fresh air, caught up in an environment of polluted hypocrisy, ego tripping, and see you at the big party next year colleagues. If the shoe don't fit, don't wear it. I met Mickey some years ago through an old friend and longtime supporter, Representative Louis Stokes. In introducing us, Lou looked me in the eye and smiled. Harold, here's a man I'm sure you will like. And he was right. In my brief encounters with Mickey over the years, I found him to be a man's man. He had principles, values, and there was a sense of balance in his life. And I am sure the balance was there because he never lost touch with the common man. He was the kind of guy that you sense would be as comfortable standing on the corner of 7th and T Street Northwest as he would be in the White House Rose Garden. Mickey had a history and track record of fighting for and with society's underdog. He went from wearing the dashiki of the 60s to wearing three-piece suits in the halls of Congress. Texas and the world has lost a great man and humanitarian. If the Congressional Black Caucus really wanted to truly honor the memory of their fallen colleague, they would name an award in his memory to be given to the member of the Black Caucus who best exemplify his humanitarian traits. They would be hard-pressed each year to come up with a member of their own fun bunch who would be worthy of this award. But it may be the inspirational tool to encourage them to get back to doing something meaningful for the people that they were sent here to serve. Washington, D.C.'s late and great songwriter-poet Marvin Gaye would have and probably did love Mickey Leland. These two men saw the world through the same pair of eyes. On Marvin's great album, What's Going On, the cut Save the Children could have easily been co-written by Mickey. I just want to ask the question, who really cares, to save a world in despair? Who really cares? There comes a time when the world won't be singing, flowers won't grow, bells won't be ringing. Who is willing to try to save a world that is destined to die? When I look at the world, it fills me with sorrow. Little children today are really going to suffer tomorrow. Oh, what a shame. Such a bad way to live. Who is to blame? Live for the life. Live life for the children. Save the babies. Who really cared? Marvin, Mickey Leland really cared.
All right. You know, you can ask that same question today. Who really cares? Marvin Gaye did. Mickey Leland did. Let's take a listen now to the sermon delivered by the Reverend James Spencer, Role Models and Heroes.
I want to preach for the next few minutes. If you will pray for me, and the Lord shall give me strength. From the theme, My Heroes, Parents and Teachers. We live in a time when there is a great deal of hero worship and mad adulation. And unfortunately, much of it is misplaced. Many are lifted up as heroes. Everyone from high-profile media personalities to superstar athletes, trailblazing politicians, and in some communities, even drug dealers and hustlers are much emulated and imitated role models. The Michael Jacksons and Michael Jordans become household names, instantly identifiable. In my case, however, you don't have to worry about me talking too long on the subject, my hero. For I am not one who hastens to put human beings on a pedestal. I am not awed by great personalities or easily impressed. If there is one thing that I have learned on this life journey, It is that all humanity is flawed. The Apostle Paul says all have sinned and have fallen short of the glory of God. Realizing that we are all struggling sinners saved by grace, we ought to be very careful about how we build folk up as heroes and role models. The lives of Len Bias and Rock Hudson and Pete Rose ought to be ample testimony that there is a very short distance between respect and ridicule, between stardom and scandal. Make sure that your heroes have stood the test of time, that they have walked as they have taught, that they have lived as they have preached, that they are truly worthy of your admiration and respect. Now, sometimes it's illuminating for an audience to understand the forces that compel a preacher to write a particular sermon. This sermon grew out of several very public events and a few private occurrences which took place in 1990. Things that happened that got me to thinking about the plight of our people and the scarcity of true heroes. Now, the first event which shook me and captured my attention was the sickening spectacle of the former black mayor of the District of Columbia leaving a courthouse, grinning from ear to ear, and flashing the V for victory sign. He was greeted by hundreds of black people cheering him and demonstrating their loyalty and fidelity. Well, pray tell, what did this man do to deserve such adulation? Hero worship, if you will. Well, let's examine it for a moment. He had been convicted of using and possessing cocaine. He had humiliated himself. He had disgraced his family. He had disrespected his wife. He had betrayed the body politic, set home rule back a decade, and crushed commandments like so many grapes under his feet. And yet, here were these people, my people, lifting him up as a hero. His feeble defense, the omnipresent cry of racism. I thought to myself, is there something wrong with me? Have I walked through the looking glass into Wonderland and lost my sense of right and wrong? Maybe, maybe it's me. Maybe it's me, I thought. Well, the second precipitating event. A young white woman jogging through the park in New York, minding her own business. And a group of young thugs, young black men, just for the hell of it, grabbed her and took her to a secluded section of the park, raped her over and over again, and then beat her with their fists and sticks and stones and left her in a pool of blood for dead. Miraculously, she survived, but she suffered some permanent brain damage. And they caught several of these young men involved in this situation, and they confessed. Do you hear me, people? They confessed to this violent, vicious, and senseless crime. And yet, when the young men were brought to trial, outside the courtroom was a group of my people protesting the trial. And once again crying, what? Racism. This group was led by their hero, this pimp slash preacher, Al Sharpton. Our leadership, disappoints me to no end. Our leadership, mostly preachers, Reverend Jesse Jackson, Reverend Benjamin Hooks, Reverend Al Sharp, and these folks bought into this practice, crying racism, using racism as an excuse for abhorrent individual behavior, going around preaching a bastardized gospel of forgiveness without confession and repentance, turning our theology upside down. A message that if we accept it, if Christians allow it to go abroad, if we accept it, would make God a chump and his grace a joke. My brothers and sisters, we must be very, very careful. For we may become the very thing that we have struggled against for 400 years. Since the first white man stepped foot on the continent of Africa. Racism. No matter what you do, and no matter how horrible your conduct, no matter how evil you are, as long as you are black and your victim is white, or if you can make it a black versus white issue, then your sins are ignored and discounted. These things weigh so heavily on my mind. But I'm talking about my people. What has happened to us? Since when have we become such a pathetic, weak, whining people without the courage to be responsible for our own actions? Without the courage to demand integrity from those who would dare claim the mantle of leadership? Are we the same people who have overcome some of the greatest obstacles ever devised by the mind of man? Dehumanizing chattel slavery, unyielding segregation, bitter poverty, circumstances that would have destroyed a lesser people. But you know what? You knocked down the walls that meant to keep you out. You educated your children in spite of their pledge to keep us ignorant. They didn't even want you to vote, and here you are electing governors and mayors. And how did we do it? And why are we slipping? I think the answer lies in our values. Old-fashioned values. These deeply rooted convictions and principles that guided our foreparents, guided their actions and reactions. And where did these values come from? Parents and teachers.
All right. That was Reverend James Spencer, Heroes and Role Models. Where did those values come from? Parents and teachers. We slipped. And how far have we slipped? You know, I just want you to think about one thing as you go out of here. That I want you to understand that, or tell me why is it that we can only treat each other like human beings when there's a national disaster. That's the only time we come to each other's aid. The rest of the time, it's a whole different story. You black, I'm white, I'm brown. I'm not African American. I'm black, I'm a Negro. Please. We're all human beings playing in the same game called life. No matter how you see it, that's the real deal. Well, that's going to be it for this segment of Legends of Inside Sports and the Way We Were. And I want you to remember that every black face you see is not your brother, and every white face is not your enemy. Until next time, I'm Harold Bell, and you can color me gone.